In this lecture, we want to explore the idea that it is possible to nest our try blocks. And we are going to look at a simple example. Here we have a function called SumFunction, and inside we're going to loop for 15 times. So it is going to loop from 0 all the way to 14 here. And in here, we're going to say the iteration we are at in our loop. And then we're going to put in a try block. And this try block is going to be delimited from this point all the way to here. But you see that inside we can put in another try block and really do things inside. And this is something we can do. So things we throw in this try block are going to be handled first by the catch blocks belonging to this try block. But if we have any unhandled exceptions, they can propagate out of that scope and be handled by the outer try block that we have here. So for example, if we have a const char exception which was not handled in there, it can be caught by this catch block here. If we have a size t exception, we can handle that in here. This is something we can do. We are going to head over to Visual Studio Code and see a concrete example of how this could work. Here we are in our working folder. The current project is nested try blocks. We're going to grab our template files and we're going to put them in place. And we are going to open this in Visual Studio Code by dragging and dropping here. This is going to give us our main CPP file that we can clean up pretty fast. Let's do this. And I am going to put in a bunch of functions we are going to play with to explore our ideas we are playing with. Again, the idea is that we can nest our try blocks. And here we have our trusty loop, which is going to loop from 0 all the way to 14. In each loop, we're going to say which iteration we are at. And then you see that we have a try block here. This try block is going to stretch all the way from line 12 to line 44, as you see here. And inside, we're going to do a bunch of things. If we are at index 2, we're going to throw this exception here and we're going to say it. And this is going to be thrown as a const char pointer because this is the type here. And after that, we're going to put in a nested try block, and we can do that. This is the idea I want to convey here. In this try block, we can try and do a bunch of things. So if I is 5, we're going to throw a character. If I is 7, we're going to throw a size t. Mind your steps here. I here is not an integer. I is of type size t, as we see in our loop here. If I is 8, we're going to call exception thrower, which is going to throw a character, z, as you see here. And if I is 9, we're going to throw an std string. We can do something like this. This inner try block can have its own catch block. And you see down here that we have a catch block, which is going to catch integers. And you see down here that we have a catch block, which is going to catch characters. So if any character is thrown from this try block, that's going to be caught in this block here, and everything else is going to fall in place. But if we have an exception which is not a character, that's going to propagate out of this try block. And we're going to look at the englobing scope. That's going to go back to the englobing try block here, and we're going to see the catch blocks that we have. We're going to see that this can catch characters. We're going to see that this can catch const char pointers, and this can catch size t exceptions. So if any is thrown that matches these types here, we are going to handle those in here. If there are exceptions that we can't handle at this level, they are going to be propagated all the way to the main function where we called this function here. And we can go in the main function and put in our code to really put all this together. We're going to put in a try catch block, which is going to call SumFunction. And we are going to put a catch block, which is going to catch string exceptions, and this is going to work really well. Now, try to think about what we're going to see if we run this application here. Let's go through it. We're going to loop from 0 all the way to 15 at index 0. We are going to say I is 0, and we're going to hit the try block here. We're going to see that if I is 2, I is not 2, so we're not going to do anything here. We're going to try things here, and we're going to see that we have nothing that does something if I is 0. So the try block here is not going to run. We're going to hit the end of it at this point here, and no catch block is really not going to run. So we are doing nothing at index 0. We are going to see this message here. We are going to hit index 1, and at index 1, I don't think we are doing anything either. So this is not going to do nothing interesting. But at index 2, we are going to hit this block here. This is going to throw this exception, which is going to be a const car pointer. Notice that we are in this outer try block, so we are going to look for a catch block here, and this is going to be handled here, and our program is going to keep running. So we are going to say that we handled this exception at index 2. We are going to increment in our loop. We are going to hit a 3, and let's see if we do something at index 3. We do nothing interesting. We are going to go to 4, and we are doing nothing interesting at 4. We are going to go to 5, and we are going to hit this block here. So we are going to throw a character, which we are going to handle in this block. So everything is going to work fine at index 5. We are going to increment and hit 6. We are doing nothing interesting at 6. And we are going to increment and get a 7. We are going to throw a size T here. So we are going to look for a handler in this inner try block, and we're not going to find that. But if we propagate this exception to the outer try block, we're going to find a handler for size T here, and we're going to handle that. So everything is going to work just fine here because the exception was handled. We are going to increment and get an 8, and we are going to call exception thrower here, which is going to throw a character. The character is going to be handled by the inner try block because we have a handler here. So at 8, we are going to handle this guy, and we are going to increment and get a 9. Hopefully you can follow this. If we get to 9, we are going to throw an std string. And our inner catch block is not going to handle the string. So this is going to propagate to the outer try block here. We are going to look at the catch blocks we have. We have none that can handle a string. So this is going to freeze our loop, and this is going to propagate out of this loop here. This is what we are doing. This is going to come back to the main function, and we see that we have a string handler here, and this is going to handle it, and our program is going to add. Notice that our loop is not going to run all the way to 15. It is going to run up the point where we hit 9, and the exception is going to propagate all the way and go out of the for loop, and it is going to freeze at 9, and we are going to end our program when we handle the exception in the main function here. This is what I want you to see. It is possible to nest try blocks. This is the main idea I am trying to convey here. Now that we know this, we can actually try and run our program. We're going to pass this through GCC. Let's do that. The build is going to be good, and we're going to try and see what we get if we run this. Let's bring up a PowerShell window, and we're going to run Rooster. We are going to see that iteration 0, 1, and 2 are going to run. At 2, we are going to throw, let's go and see what we threw. We are going to throw a const car pointer exception. This is going to be handled by the outer catch block because that can handle const car pointer exceptions. This is what we see here. Iteration 3 is going to run 4 and 5. And at 5, we are going to throw, what do we throw at 5? Let's make sure we see that. We throw a character, and it is going to be handled by the inner catch block because we can handle characters. At 6, we're not going to do anything. At 7, we are going to throw a size T, and we are going to catch that in our outer catch block. We are going to go at 8. We are going to throw, let's see what we throw at 8. We are going to throw a character that comes from our function here. So the character is going to be caught by our inner catch block. This is what we see here. And it is printed as a Z because it is what we threw here. And at iteration 9, we are going to throw our string from the inner try block. The exception is not going to be handled by the inner catch block because it is not a character. This is going to propagate to the outer try block, which is going to forward the exception to the catch block here. This is not going to handle it either because neither of the catch blocks can handle an std string. So this is going to propagate out of the loop. This is going to freeze our loop. So it is going to stop executing. We're going to go in the main function and handle this. That's why we see the output message here, main catch block quote string thrown for int 9. And our program is going to end if we put in an std cout and say end. We're going to see this at the end of our program execution here. Let's run this through GCC to see our end message. We can clear and run Rooster. We're going to see that we see our end message here. And this is really all I had to share in this lecture, showing you that you can nest your try blocks if it makes sense for whatever you are doing with your C++ program. We are going to stop here in this lecture. In the next one, we are going to see that it is possible to throw class objects. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.